To Somalia now, where a desperate search is underway for a German nurse kidnapped by gunmen. It happened last week in the country's capital of Mogadishu. Decades of violence there have made Somalia one of the most dangerous places in the world, especially for humanitarian aid workers. But security has greatly improved. This is the first kidnapping involving an international worker in nearly a decade. CBS News foreign correspondent Debora Patta is with me now from Johannesburg to talk about this. Deborah, what's the latest on this nurse who was abducted? What more can you tell us?
Well, the German nurse, Sonja Nientet, was kidnapped from her compound. And I think that is the alarming thing about this particular story, is that usually when you reach your compound, which is in a relatively safe part of Mogadishu, relative being a relative term in Somalia, there is a measure of safety. But this was, it seems, according to Somali intelligence officials, an inside job where a security personnel inside the compound was involved in the snatching of the German nurse, and they actually escaped in a vehicle, a Red Cross vehicle. That was later abandoned, looking as if they had switched vehicles. It seemed initially from Somali intelligence officials that this was as a result of a disgruntled security personnel working in the Red Cross compound. He was having a dispute with the parent company, but the fear is that now it's understood that Sonja Nientet was taken to the Middle Shabelle region, which in recent months has become a very strong area held by the Al-Qaeda-linked Al-Shabaab organization operating in Somalia. And the fear is that she could perhaps be sold to Al-Shabaab.
Wow. You were just in Somalia recently, Deborah. I want to play some of the clips of you there. Let's play that.
Violence is unpredictable in Mogadishu. The gun rules far more often than the law here. So we've been advised to wear protective gear whenever we go outside of our hotel. Filming in Mogadishu has been so difficult. There are roadblocks everywhere. In the time we've been here, we were surrounded by armed police and even arrested briefly on one occasion. We have repeatedly been told that Al-Shabaab has eyes and ears everywhere. They blend easily into local communities, and a quiet road like this may not look menacing, but it can turn nasty in an instant.
So, Deborah, we heard you mention that you were arrested there briefly for a moment. Was that regular police? Was that a militia? And just give us a sense of what it's like now. Does Somalia still deserve the title, specifically Mogadishu, as one of the world's most dangerous cities?
Well, certainly violence has subsided compared to what it was a decade ago. It's not as extreme as it was, but it's still a very, very unstable. I mean, every second person you see there, whether they're armed or not, has an AK-47 or something similar slung over their shoulder. When we go out to film in Somalia, we have to take armed guards. We had 10 armed guards protecting us when we just did those pieces to camera that you saw there. That's how difficult it is, because anything could happen, and it does happen. The most recent, of course, example being that horrific bomb blast in October last year, which killed over 500 people in the capital of Mogadishu, and it's believed that it was done by Al-Shabaab in the capital. The other problem is where you stay. So, for example, a lot of the aid organizations are in the airport area, which is considered to be relatively safe, or just outside the airport area, which is where the Red Cross nurse was and where we stayed. But moving around the city is very difficult. When we were arrested, for example, we were in the wrong area at the wrong time. It suddenly turned nasty. Our car was surrounded by armed gunmen who were protecting that street. And each street has different militia groups protecting it. Eventually, they called in reinforcements. We had an armed tank pointing at us. It calmed down a little bit after our security people spoke to them, but we were still arrested and taken by intelligence to the intelligence headquarters, where we were interrogated for a couple of hours and let go. Nobody ever explained to us what the reason for this temporary detention was. It wasn't too extreme, but it certainly goes to show that anything could happen at any time. It is not a safe place. It is difficult to operate in, and is becoming increasingly hazardous. And the worry is now, with this kidnapping of an aid worker, that could hamper aid work in the country, which needs it so desperately.
Yeah, so not only does it hamper the work that aid workers are doing in the country. And given the fact that you just pointed out to us that you have armed security with you when you're on the ground reporting for those very dangerous conditions, it must also be even more challenging for example, freelance reporters and reporters who don't have the resources that CBS News has.
It always is challenging for freelance reporters. You know, one of the things about CBS News is they take extreme precautions to ensure that they can protect us as far as possible. We're in a war zone. It is dangerous. There is a risk involved. But you're absolutely right, and they are often at the greatest risk because it is expensive. It's expensive to operate in these African countries, and it is one of the reasons why Somalia is one of the most underreported wars in the world right now, and it does deserve attention because it is a situation that is pretty serious and is causing implications not just for that particular region, but has global implications as Al-Shabaab continues to operate in that area. And as we know, Al-Shabaab has made incursions across into other countries as well. So certainly you're quite right. For freelance reporters, this is a very, very difficult area to operate in.
Yeah, and it was just heartbreaking when back in November there was an explosion that killed hundreds of people, and you point out rightly, Deborah, that the world has sort of been silent when it comes to Somalia, and we're so glad that you're able to get in there at great risk to yourself and to your crew and report on what is happening there so that people will understand and perhaps people will take note. Debora Patta, always great to talk to you. Thank you so much.